Welcome to Fortify Your Future, a podcast for professionals who currently have executive oversight of or aspire to be leading the safety and security function for their organization. I'm your host, Ken Carrasco, and joining me today on the podcast is Leslie Rubin. Now, Leslie is the CEO and founder of Image Matterz Advisors, where she specializes in strategic and executive communications, leadership coaching, and development. She works with leaders who want to speak with confidence, build their leadership brand, and drive real impact. From startups to Fortune 500 leaders, Leslie is a sought after facilitator and speaker. She is also the author of Filling the Leadership Gap and co author of the Amazon bestseller Meaning. We actually know each other through our connection with Cisco, where Leslie led the executive communications team under then chairman and CEO John Chambers. Welcome, Leslie.
Yay. Thanks so much, Ken. I'm happy to be here, happy to be on the podcast Fortify Your Future, and looking forward to our dialogue and
Yeah,
imparting
thank
some
you.
great insight.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right out of the gate, what today are you really professionally focused in on?
Yeah, as you had highlighted or mentioned, I'm working with a lot of leaders, those that are high potentials, on developing their communication style, their executive leadership brand, really enhancing themselves to inspire others to be motivated to take action. So, a lot of the work that I do, and what I also wrote about in my book, Filling the Leadership Gap, is looking at helping leaders become more aware, be intentional, be consistent, and be strategic thinkers, and maintaining that leadership brand or developing a leadership brand and the importance of that.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's so critical. And I have your book. I've gotten it. I've read it. Here it is. Highly recommend that. We'll
Thank
include
you.
links to your book as well in the description. So critical to have a really good understanding of all of these nuances, certainly from the executive's perspective and those things that are critical in today's world. Now, a big part of our audience are individuals who are transitioning. They're former law enforcement,
Yeah.
they're former government, former military. And so what can they do to prepare themselves for transitioning into the private sector and understanding all of these various things that they really must embrace as they make that transition?
Yeah, and it's twofold because I know your audience is the C level, the CHRO, or the COO who's going to manage that individual. But then that person who's transitioning from, say, military, law enforcement, or a government professional, there's a lot of structure and rigor that comes with these branches or areas. And let me give an example. Something we don't think about as a civilian or someone who's in corporate is the simplicity of picking out an outfit or picking out clothes, and then go next level that we've got casual environments or business casual. So you go from knowing that I'm wearing a uniform for 10 plus years or more in the military to, oh gosh, I've got to pick out an outfit and it's got to be appropriate. So these, in a branch of military or law enforcement, there are any shades of gray. You know what you're wearing, you know what it looks like. And then you start to get into a corporate environment where it's business casual, and there are many different meanings around that. And that ambiguity or constant change can be pretty darn stressful for someone who's used to that structure and process. And so much of what they experience of going into those shades of gray and how those goals or expectations were already there. It now becomes a little bit more ambiguous as well as contradictory sometimes. So I have a friend, my friend Dr. Casey Jensen. He writes about in his dissertation dark ambiguity when direction and vision are unclear. And both for the military as well as law enforcement, you know your mission, you know what needs to be done. And as we can attest, it can change from quarter to quarter, it can change from year to year. And what does that do for someone who has always had that structure and rigor? And it can definitely be a culture shock So some of those small things, I jest a little bit about the what do I wear, but that can really bog someone down and be pretty overwhelming. And I'm going to touch a little bit, Ken, if you indulge me, about the education components of what it really takes in transitioning into a corporate environment. First of all, be patient with yourself. Give yourself a little bit of grace. But there are elements of, yes, learning what to wear, but there's the speak. So you may wait for your captain general, or you may wait for your superior to speak to you or give you direction. In this case, that's a different expectation. The expectation is that you will speak up, you will think strategically, you'll understand the business. Not obviously the case. So you bring so much value, but that one-to-one transition isn't necessarily going to happen. I think it behooves any organization or leader to have some level of onboarding. So if someone has special background or special service, that there is some level of entry level onboarding for culture to help bridge some of those gaps from dress code to decision making styles. But we'll talk, I'm sure, a little bit about what does the CRO do, or COO, or CHRO, as far as setting that mission. But having that clarity and understanding what that means for someone as a veteran to shift into a new role, how do you give some structure to that? Because it's going to be different. It's definitely going to be different. That business fluency, the understanding, the return on investment, the culture, what is different in an enterprise than was different in your military branch per se. So there's some adaptability here.
Yeah, no, that I was just going to mention that is so key, is your ability to adapt is probably the single most important trait that you really must understand coming from these very structured environments. And it's always it's I've seen it time and time again based upon, just my experience being exposed to the industry for 30 years. And it's difficult. We used to say it's like understanding how to turn it on and off like a light switch. And what it really is, it's more like a dimmer switch. It's like ratcheting it down, ratcheting it up, and having sort of an understanding, or being able to adjust accordingly. Because there are times when, just the nature of what we do requires sort of that engagement or enforcement, if you will. But
Enforcement. Yeah.
what I always like to say is that we should be enablers of business, right? That's something that
Mm,
I tend to preach, right? And the way we become enablers is to understand sort of the nuances of what these new environments now are, and being able to adapt.
yeah.
Uh, are there other things along those lines that help people learn about how to, I guess, adapt more quickly or become more comfortable with it?
Yeah, I think that, the key is the translation. So we're learning to speak a little bit of a different language. Putting yourself out there, you bring the discipline and the mission focus, that's a given. But learning to speak the language of business, understanding what the culture is going to be totally different than what you came from. The return on investment, the enterprise risk, just the languages. And, I think of that mission mindset is your edge, but translating into language of business. What's important to the people on the inside? What's important to your executive leader? You understanding how safety and security connects to the business is a really important aspect of that. So take some courses internally, learn about what your company does and what they stand for, the mission, the values, and how what you bring to the table based on your background gives you that leg up. But there are going to be some other elements, meet people in other parts of the organization and business, connecting, networking, not just with individuals that might have that similar background in military or law enforcement, but getting to know different aspects or angles of the business will really give you that strategic thinking and make you even more valuable beyond what you're bringing into the organization already.
Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned a little bit earlier on is we talked a little bit about you talked a little bit about sort of our audience and this in the C-suite, and this is
Yeah.
your what I call your sweet spot. You are dialed into this. And one of the key things that I continue to see is sort of that gap of senior level executives sort of not really understanding or really, I think, connecting the dots when it comes to looking for the right leaders in the safety and security function. So, based upon your experience and your research, what is the biggest mistake that
Mm.
C-level execs are making when they're looking for safety and security leaders? And what should they be looking for in a safety and security leader, in your opinion?
Absolutely. So, if you think about, even that word adaptability we were looking at, are those individuals who, one, can shift from a command and control to one of having more influence, or their adaptability to collaborate better, hugely important. Some of the things that I've seen along the way is you get a chief resource, or excuse me, a CHRO, or you get a COO, and that, like, where do we put safety and security? It sort of like fits in, and it behooves all leaders. Your role is to develop that next generation of leaders. So your responsibility is to see, no matter what background, culture, etc., how are you continuing to develop the needs of the individuals on your team? And I would say biggest mistakes. I would say more often than not, they overvalue the technical expertise, but they undervalue the need for that person to have leadership presence. And great safety and security leaders aren't just rule enforcers or rule book holders. They're great communicators, they're great strategists, and they're great trust builders. So it's your role as a leader to develop that even more so, to help them understand the dynamics in the organization, to align safety with business priorities, to inspire the teams to really take ownership of security, not just compliance. So there's some social adaptability, putting them in front of the board, letting them sit in on business related meetings for them to have a deeper understanding. So for them to have these individuals that you bring into your into your organization, knowing their unique leadership value and positioning them for impact. And what do I mean? The consistency of lining their actions, their communication style, how they're connecting and making decisions to reinforce their brand, but the brand of the organization or the brand of the team. And something that people don't think about. That's done through interaction. That's done through building relationships, expanding your influence, and deepens your credibility.
You talked and named off several things that I read about in your book, the
Yeah.
strategies that executives, need to use to coach and train potential directors of safety and security. You just touched on branding and how that is so important. Now, the strategies that you've touched on, is there any one that's more important or applicable for a safety and security leader, or is this something that when you look at the different strategies that it's something that all of us need to work on, right? As leaders. But from the safety and security perspective of that individual, would you say there's one that's any more important than the other, or how would you characterize sort of the strategies that C-level executives should be utilizing to reinforce what their expectations are for those leaders?
Yeah, I would say don't just slant on the structure, the background of that person coming from law enforcement. So look beyond that, shifting that development lens from operational to helping them be more strategic. It's not something that all leaders will think about. But when I know the hard skills and the soft skills, I can coach them to translate safety metrics into the language the executives care about. They become even more valuable: cost avoidance, productivity, reputation, culture. So building the confidence and credibility of that individual, giving them insight and exposure to the different functions really ties directly to how we emphasize their value. And as I said, looking at bringing them into a board meeting, giving them opportunities to present risk in business terms. Also, looking at that leadership muscle, investing in their coaching and strengthening of their communication, their adaptability, decision making under pressure. I almost feel like that's a built in because these individuals know how to react in a crisis situation. How am I now translating that into an organization that is always changing? Do they value that? Do they only look at the bottom line? So there are elements of shifting that operation to strategy and putting them in front of coaching them on communication, having self awareness, identifying that. Do they have self awareness? Um, have they built their network? Are they staying just in their group? Are they getting exposure and opportunity to be with others to even learn a broader culture, organization? And then it's that connecting, it's that collaboration and influence that will really help to make these individuals extremely successful. They're coming built in with some pretty darn good stuff as far as the structure and rigor. It's you helping set that direction and giving them that North Star and vision so they know the direction they need to go to be successful. And what I will say is for the individuals that are transitioning from these different law enforcement, military, different branches, that give yourself some grace. That first job may not work out because that cultural integration may not be there. But as you're interviewing and making that transition in, see what fits for you. Ask about values, ask about training, ask about what's important in the organization as a whole. And then you figure out how you fit into that and how it feels good to you to be a part of it.
Right, a lot to digest, but it's all within, the content of, going back to, what you've written about and your experience. I find so useful, and I think anyone, whether you're just transitioning or even for those in corporate security that perhaps have hit some sort of roadblock, leveling up to that next
Yeah.
level, right, is understanding this content as well because it's all applicable. Well, one of the things it's important for me is value. And so I always ask my guests, what kind of value can you bring in terms of information or guidance for our audience that's actionable?
Yeah. So for me, the one thing that I would love to offer is for your listeners through the end of September. I don't know when you're going to air this, but through the end of September, I would love to offer a free coaching session. And as you mentioned, you'll put my website on there. Please, my calendar's available. Go ahead and post something on there. Let's connect. I want to see where I can help you have a conversation, see if there's a fit. But I would love to be able to offer that to your listeners. Also, pick up a copy of my book. It's a really easy read, available on Amazon, but it's great refreshers and some aha elements in there that help prepare you at any phase in your career. Be it I'm a current C-suite leader to, hey, I'm looking to elevate myself within my organization.
Oh, great. No, absolutely love that. Thank you so much for that offer. I know listeners will really appreciate it. I hope people will take advantage of that. Over the years, I've taken advantage of your guidance to me, and it's worked tremendously for me in
Thank
terms
you.
of things that I've focused in on. Of one of which is brand, is how important brand is. And so I
Yes.
think, we're in different times now, right? And so branding as an individual, I don't know that I ever thought about it as serious as I do today. And so with that, any closing thoughts or guidance, advice that you can give for our audience that you haven't already covered?
Yeah, I love it when someone says, "Oh, I didn't realize I have a brand." Well, when you don't realize you have a brand and you can manage that, other people have already given you a brand. So take the opportunity to understand, what do I stand for? What are the 3 to 5 words that I want associated with me and that I will emulate and that I will lead with so that people know what I stand for? And you've had guests on here who talk about consistency. So when you consistently show up in your brand, people know what they can expect from you. You think about those international brands that we have, or US based brands, be it Starbucks or BMW or Volvo or McDonald's. And then you start thinking about leaders that you know. So it could be a Steve Jobs, a Bill Clinton, an Oprah, Deepak Chopra. There are so many different leaders. You know what you can expect from them. So, as someone who's transitioning into a new role, think about your brand value. What do I stand for? What do I want to be known for? And how can I contribute based on those key elements of my strength?
Leslie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I know that you're adding so much value to your listeners. So, thank you for that, Ken. It's been a pleasure.